about what our main goals were for our students, and one of the first interactions you have with your students is through your syllabus. And whenever you design a course, that's one of the first places you have to sort of get going. I mean, you definitely, it has to be done before the class starts, so it's a good place to start if you're not sure what you're doing with your course, because you have to have the whole model of what your class looks like in order to build a syllabus, okay? And people do syllabi a lot of different ways, but our goal in this exercise is to make sure your outcomes from your syllabus match what you mean them to do, okay? So if you say that tests are worth 90% of the grade, is that going to have the effect that you want? Okay, if you heavily weight attendance, is that going to make students better or not? Like, do you know if that's actually working? Okay.
And specifically meeting the outcomes or goals that you guys all just shared.
Yeah.
Right. Does your syllabus reflect them?
And that's tricky because some of those goals are quite esoteric, and like weighting your homework might not seem like it's obviously going to connect, the students to that goal. But there are some things you can do to sort of make your syllabus more robust so that it communicates some of these ideas. And we're going to provide a lot of tools for creating a syllabus. You do not need to use all of them, okay? So you want to pick the ones that really speak to you and you think are going to be effective for you to reach your personal goals. So I'm just going to show you the evolution of what my syllabus has looked like over the last decade. So this one, this looks like every syllabus ever, okay? And it has the key things, it's got the checks the boxes, and I'm gonna go page by page, but after a while I switched to that, and I found that students find it easier to read. I don't know, just going from there to there, it's a little bit more work, but once you have it set up, you just have to change some of the key points. And there's lots of different ways you can do this. So I made it a little bit more personal. Like, now they know what I look like. They will know that eventually, but if you post the syllabus a couple of weeks ahead of time, it also prevents them from being like, so who's the instructor? Because you look like you're 12. So, fortunately I've aged a little. But, yeah, so, and then, there's some things that are required, like contact information about the course, but then you get into, like, grading, right? And this works, it's functional, it's fine, but this is a little bit more exciting, okay? So it says a lot of the same things, but it sorts it in a way that makes it more intuitive to use for the students, okay? And then last, I stole all of these tips for success from another instructor, because they seemed good, so I just used them. Then I later sort of customized them to my class, and I sorted them to make them a little bit easier to use, and maybe a little bit more fun to read, okay? And I also hide Easter eggs in my syllabus for students to see if they actually read them. There's extra credit points just tucked into paragraphs, and I change them every semester. And it does make people read through the syllabus because there's a buzz among the students that there's somewhere in there hidden is a secret extra credit point if you get to it. So they have to at least read time. I'm just showing you this. Now you don't have to make your syllabus look like either of these things. This is just something that's been working really well for me. I also have them take a syllabus quiz, and then in class, I don't just read through the syllabus. I usually break things down. I take elements from the syllabus, so if they've seen it, it looks like what they saw. And I talk about just the key points that I really want to make sure they know for 10 or 15 minutes. So I don't have a syllabus day, okay? And the main thing is I sort of, zip through these and see if they have questions about particular things. And then I point out sticky points that people usually have trouble with, so I give some explanation of the syllabus. I give them a chance to ask questions, and if they find things that really aren't working for that class, there's an opportunity to make changes to it. And I haven't had to do that in a while, but the students will give you good feedback if you make them feel comfortable like they can do that. I also have this. I used to just use this for myself when I graded problems, but I thought I wanted to be more transparent, and I maybe should have changed the wording. Like this one's maybe not that friendly, but I like it, so I kept it. This rubric is set up to help them understand that they want to try, right? Because you can get points without really solving the problem, but it encourages them to do, some problem-solving techniques that they can still get points for. And thanks to this one, I've gotten a lot of really great poems and drawings of epic sadness. And there's just been a lot of great art that's come out of just having this on the rubric.
It's amazing that art somebody will do for 1 point.
I think it's more. I don't think it's like a point thing. I think it's just therapeutic for them, and they know they're being rewarded. Yeah. So, then I have like the sad stuff where you have to talk about cheating. But the most important part is really this page 3, right? Like, so I try to sum up in a concise a way as possible what I think they need to do well in the class. Because I teaching first semester physics, every year I get the same complaints. The tests are hard. The tests and homework, that's harder than what we're doing in class. I read the whole book and I showed up, but I still didn't do really well on the test. I did the homework, but I tried to do the homework and it's too hard, and I just don't have that kind of time to like do that. And so I try to give them some tips about how to get started, and I try to really set the idea in their heads that this isn't a class where they can just show up and memorize things and do okay. That I always use the analogy, although I've been trying to use different analogies because some classes have more of what I like to call indoor kids than others, but I used to use a sports analogy, so I was worried if people weren't very athletic, maybe it wouldn't work, but I'm like, okay, I asked them what they're really interested in, like sports or games. It's been shifting towards video games. And I asked them, okay, especially for sports, it's hard to move away from that. If let's say you've watched thousands of hours of football, thousands of hours, do you think you could be a professional quarterback? And they always say, no, that's ridiculous. And I was like, well, what do you have to do to be even a high school quarterback? And they're like, well, you probably have to like throw the ball sometimes, and maybe catch the ball sometimes, and maybe run, and you might want to practice some things. And I'm like, yeah, you can watch me do a lot of physics, and it's not going to help you because you're just not going to be able to do it. You have to practice the problems. And I go through this whole speech, and they nod their heads, and they ignore all of the advice. And then we get to the first test, and it's always a tragedy. And then I go back to the speech because they're all paying attention after the first test to how they might do better on the next test.
Good advice.
Yeah. So,
also, I feel like we're all going to be using that analogy this semester.
Well, you can
wait, I heard my other professor say that.
You can use baseball, or if they watched a lot of StarCraft, for the kids that don't go outside, and that. Yes.
So your point about working together, I'm not really familiar yet with the community college environment so much, but it seems like I went to a 4-year college. Everybody lived in dorms the first 2 years. It was pretty easy to form study groups.
Yeah.
It might be more kind of a lot to ask if these people live in all different places and they have jobs. They may not know each other.
Yeah,
that
so
might be a big ask.
That is a problem, and so one of the things you have to do is make sure they get to know each other. They do have technology that we didn't have. Every one of my study groups has some sort of group chat or group text. So while they're doing the homework, even if they can't work together, if they get stuck, they'll text each other a picture of where they're stuck. And then somebody will respond, oh, I did that problem, here's my solution. So even though it's hard, so a lot of them will schedule times like maybe before or after class to meet up, because they end up, they're usually STEM majors, they're stuck in this building for large sums of time, and if they have big gaps between classes. And the reality is a lot of them have similar classes. Like if they're taking Physics 1, they're probably taking Calc 2 and maybe a couple other classes that are in common. So they will probably have a lot of them are in the same classes and they have the same gaps, so they can work together. But the technology has really changed the ability to do group work even when you don't have a physical connection for the group work. Yeah. Okay. Hey. So as we do this next assignment, so we're gonna go through this packet. But remember, as you're doing this, keep in mind, does this reflect the goals that we just shared out for your students? How does this look from a student perspective? And how will you know if this is working? How do you plan to test to see if what you implement is actually gonna make a difference to the students?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna.
The one little thing that I'd add to this is also to remember as you're designing syllabus, that this is not just a way to communicate what's going to be in the course, but it's also a way of communicating what's important to you as an instructor. You know, what do you care about? And as dry as making a syllabus can be, there's something kind of nice about being able to frame a document that like shares what is important to you as an educator. You know, and then having that be communicated to the students and have them pick up on it.
And well, I think technically we are supposed to have a paper syllabus, but some of the stuff that we're going to suggest you can put in your syllabus, you don't always have to house in the physical PDF or whatever you end up turning into the college. You can put it somewhere on Canvas that's near the syllabus or easy to find. I mean, I've seen people do blog posts as syllabi. I've seen people do infographics as syllabi. There's lots of different ways to go about this, but the point is you have these core things that you have to put legally, but the other stuff you put really tells the students a lot about what you value in the course. So I have these little packets. We were going to just, I was sort of just going to walk you through this packet. Does everybody have a copy of this? Okay, yeah. So I went through the faculty, did you guys, anybody know we have a faculty handbook for Grossmont and Cuyamaca? I only vaguely remember that we did. Yeah. And they updated it since I got here. They now have the 2017 to 2019 version, which is in fact different. And and I added some things that I thought were important. But the core of this first page is just stuff in the faculty handbook. And I just wanted you guys to have this as a tool when you actually make a syllabus so that you're in compliance. And if you look at it, if you look at this online, it's posted on Canvas in our Canvas course. There are hyperlinks to the things, so like if you need to find the course outlines, there's a link to them, and then you just have to sign in so you can see it. So you can see, it shows you how to get to all of the different course outlines for all of the courses we offer at both Grossmont and Cuyamaca. So when they say, oh, you need the SLOs from the course outline, you'll actually know where that is. You know, general class information, you know, the basics, the stuff that you have to have on the syllabus. And then the stuff that's in italics is optional stuff. So like, you don't have to put your schedule on the syllabus, especially if you're using Canvas. It might be easier to put it in Canvas. That way it's more dynamic. Like if you get behind or if you get ahead, you can shift the dates and it will automatically notify students that you did it. You don't have to remember to announce it. But at least in your syllabus, you can say, check Canvas for the schedule, which is what I do. And then, textbooks, all that stuff. Course requirements. And then this next page is what I call optional but highly suggested information, either to put on your syllabus or in some adjacent thing. General classroom information, like what are the topics you're going to cover? That's not required, right? We're required to have SLOs and a course description. But if you want to say, okay, here's the topics we're going to go through in a more formal way. Topic-specific competencies. You'll notice these things at the top are all from the teaching practices inventory that we just took, right? So what skills do you want them to have? Do you want to convey that to them, okay? Because that might not necessarily be reflected in the way that the course outline's written. Because the course outline is not intended specifically for students. It's an internal document for the institution. So you might want to take some of the information that's in the course outline and in the catalog and sort of redefine it in a way that they're going to understand it, so they are clear on what you're trying to get them to learn. And then, you know, if you want to put things like classroom goals or effective goals, meaning like that last third page, changing their attitude about what they think they can learn, okay? Formatting is optional, but the more visually appealing you make it and the cleaner you make it, it really is your first impression to the students, and so if they see something beautiful, they're going to assume your class is going to reflect that. If they see something that's thrown together and full of typos, they're going to also assume that your class is going to reflect that. So it's a really good way to make a good first impression. I always like to put a picture of myself either in the syllabus or on Canvas, and we'll actually do an exercise for the next course on how to make a good profile in Canvas, so when you're commenting on students' discussion posts, they can actually see it's you, okay? It's also good to have them do that for each other, so if they're discussing, they know who they're talking to, and you don't have as many trolls, okay? Canvas, I linked to the epic 5 to 20 hour long course that our college offers. It's actually really good. Not everybody has that kind of time, so we'll try to put just little like pro tips into this course that I got from the 20 hours that I spent in that course, okay? So just the basics. But if you really feel compelled to learn a lot about Canvas, Rhonda has you covered. When we switched from Blackboard to Canvas, she called it getting on the Canvas train, and there was all this like, she made this like train logo. And it's like kind of adorable. But okay, and then accessibility and inclusion, you know, we throw around a lot of these buzzwords about those things, but there are some actual good practices. Accessibility is not just sharing, not just knowing which of your students have legal DSPS rights, but also making sure as you get to know your students that your course is working for them. Like, for instance, I started recording all audio of my lectures because I had a student who had a baby, ended up missing a lot of class, but she was still able to complete the course even though she couldn't come to a lot of lectures because she was sick, right? I had a dad who ended up having to take off time because his wife had a baby. I had a student whose mom was dying and he wanted to be at the hospital. And so, you know, if you make it so that the students can't get the content from class any other way, they don't maybe have a specific disability that's covered by the law, but you know, you're asking them to basically quit and come back. And a lot of schools, especially with the fires and things, have started having alternative instruction, so recording classes and having that content available for emergencies. So like if you have to cancel class, you might not have to get a week or two behind if everything's on fire. You'd be like, oh, you've got internet access, you can still watch the lecture online. Yeah, so there's a few more details. All of this is put together primarily from an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education that is really long if you want to read it, that has a lot of good advice, and then from our own faculty handbook, although I edited out some of the stuff that was lame. So there's some stuff to avoid, and then getting students to read it is a whole different ballgame. So mention it a lot, refer back to it as you're going through the course. When they're like, well, are you going to drop a test? I'll be like, I wonder if that's in the syllabus. And then I'm like, you can ask questions about the course, but if they're in the syllabus, I'm just going to say syllabus. So you're going to have to go back to that. You don't want to read them the whole thing on the first day of class, just a few highlights of stuff that you think they might have questions about or might not be obvious. You want to let them, well, this is for people that hand it out in paper, but if you're not going to, you should always have a place they can get a backup. And usually that's just like Canvas. It's a good practice to post it on your Canvas page so they can find it. But make sure that you've done that and it's up to date. I like to give like a very low stakes syllabus quiz where they can, I give them like 3 chances to get all the points. So one of the questions I always put is like, if you have 3 exams and exams are worth 20% of your grade and we drop 1, how much is each exam worth? Because they should be able to do that. So can they calculate their grade on their own? Which is an easy math question on that. But the rest of it's just like, did you read to here? And it forces them to go back. So I always pick the questions on stuff that I think I want them to know. Sure, they can just cherry pick, but at least they've read part of it and they know where it is. And then hiding Easter eggs, that's always just fun. And then make the syllabus matter. Like put stuff in there that they can refer back to at different times, okay? So, and then I linked the faculty handbook and then some software if you want to make yours really graphical and you don't want to use like PowerPoint or Keynote or any of the templates that are there. You just really feel strongly that you want to use something like extra robust. Okay, so what we're going to do is form small groups, sort of discuss which of these things you want to include in your syllabus, and then we'll take a long time and just have people outline their syllabi. And if you have a computer, you can actually start making it. Or if you have an old syllabus and you just want to modify what you already have, bring it up. And hopefully this is for a course that you're actually going to teach. And what we're going to do after this, if we don't finish, is we'll post to Canvas the completed product. And then we'll have peer grading so we can see how we do peer grading in Canvas with rubrics. And I was going to have us create a rubric, but we're running low on time, so I'll just make a rubric. And then you'll see it in Canvas and you can grade accordingly. Okay?
And one other thought as you guys work on this, if there is any stuff that came up in that survey that you took before our course that like caught your attention, where you're like, oh man, that sounds kind of interesting, kind of cool, I might want to try that this semester, kind of have that in the back of your head as you design a syllabus, okay? Like, was there something that you know that this semester okay, so I'll just take Sebastian's thing. He wants students to be able to communicate, right? Be able to talk with each other and talk about physics. Actually, you said that too, working in groups, Misha. So what are one of these practices that you saw, or something different, something new, that would reinforce those goals that you might want to include?
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to point out is on Canvas, I posted about 5 different syllabi that are a couple that just meet the minimum requirements, and then a few that I thought were a little bit more exceptional, right? So one that's like really graphical, one that has a lot of really good tips on how to like run a course, and then the ones that I showed you of mine, those are both up there too. Okay. Yeah, so we'll take about, 5 or 10 minutes and just discuss, you guys can just discuss which things you want to include, and then we'll have some time for people to work independently.